everyone, and welcome to Fat 50 and Running a Marathon, a channel dedicated to health, diet, fitness, and goal achievement. I'm your humble host, Topher, and I hope you'll give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, share your stories about gardening in the comments section. This is the Fat 52 in Gardening series that's dedicated to me learning the finer points of backyard gardening. So, this video probably should have been the very first video instead of the one that was, because what I want to show you is material accumulation for composting. Right now I'm focusing on composting. Haven't planted anything yet, so most of my focus right now is on composting, and most of these videos are going to be dedicated to composting for a while. So what I wanted to do today was show you just how easily you can accumulate the brown or carbon materials that you're going to need for composting. For aerobic composting, which is what I have in my backyard because it has vents that allow air to get to it, we are creating bacterial compost. And we are doing that by 2 parts carbon or brown materials and 1 part nitrogen or green materials. And that nitrogen is things like potato peels, carrot tops, banana peels, eggshells, things like that, your kitchen scraps. That makes up the nitrogen or green materials. And carbon is, as I said, the brown materials. And I'm just going to show you really quickly some of the materials you can use and how you can save yourself a little bit of time by making some of these materials smaller. Now, one of the easiest things to collect around the house is paper. And paper needs to be actual paper, not glossy paper like you'd find in a magazine or something like that, but it needs to be actual paper, good quality paper. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with this. I've got a voting notice and I've got a piece of paper, and what I want you to do is I want you to fold it, but I want you to make a strange fold. And the reason for this is we're going to start cutting. We're going to start cutting strips like a normal paper shredder would do, but we're going to do it in other places, and we're going to start at different times. And I've said this before, and I believe this firmly, if you have documents at home full of information that you don't necessarily want anybody to have, yet at the same time you don't need the document any longer, this is probably one of the smartest things to do. It's not only tearing up the paper and tearing up the information that's on those documents, but you're keeping it right there on your premises, and it's turning into your garden soil. How could that be? Nobody out there can offer you a safer shredding option than that. So as you see here, I'm cutting around, I'm cutting in different places, I'm starting in different places, I'm cutting strips, and the reason I'm doing that is it makes it even more difficult for someone to try and piece this all together. So that's what you do with paper. Paper towels. Now what I've done with this particular paper towel is I've put a single almond and a rubber band wrapped around it to simulate maybe the part of the paper towel you don't necessarily want to touch. Maybe this paper towel was used to clean up something and there's still some decent little fringes like this, but this part right here you don't want to touch. So what are you going to do? You're going to grab it by one of those clean fringes and you're just going to start cutting pieces off. Okay? And you're going to do that until you've got enough small pieces off that you're basically down to that one part of the paper towel you don't want to touch. And when you're down to that, you're just going to throw it into your material accumulation. Another great thing to add to this is if you order from Amazon, I'm sure you've gotten plenty of this. This is easy. Again, fold it up into a wad and start cutting like so over your material accumulation bucket. Boom! Couldn't be easier. Honestly, couldn't be easier. Something to do instead of play with your phone while you're watching television. Lastly, we're going to go into paper towel and toilet paper rolls, which is one of the better things to add to. Apparently worms really like cardboard, so I've been making a big point of adding this to the compost, because eventually I will be introducing worms to the compost, and we'll discuss that in a much later video. But the first thing to do is fold them in half, and on one of those lines that you've made, just cut right down that middle. Now you see that it's open like such. And now you just start cutting like you did on that piece of paper. And you just cut, and if it starts to get too difficult to cut across or along, you just hit a smaller spot and you start cutting. And you just keep cutting. And you do the same thing with this, with the paper towel roll that you do with the toilet paper roll. And real quick, I just want to show you, this is what it looks like when all is said and done. And this is what I'm accumulating in a 5-gallon bucket outside. when I've got two 5-gallon buckets and two 5-gallon buckets full of my brown material and one 5-gallon bucket full of my green material. That will be when it's ready to add to the composter. And you'll see the composter in a later video. If you want to see what it looks like now, you can go to the very first video of this series. What I'm going to do is I'm going to include a link to Growing Your Greens, John Kohler's video specifically about carbon and nitrogen material accumulation and how to go about combining them for your composter. So, until next time, remember, only by taking care of ourselves first are we capable of taking care of others. Thanks for watching and happy gardening. Topher.